Okay, everyone, welcome back. Nice to see you guys all back. I'm sure you guys had a really wonderful lunch wherever you guys ended up and whatever you did. So we're going to start our afternoon with talking about this topic of integrating the teachings into your life. I know that normally I start with meditation and you guys are used to that, but I'm going to share this little teaching with you and then you'll see what we're going to do from there. So let me just switch over to the visual aids. Okay, there we go. All right. So now that you've learned a certain amount in this course, the way that you get the most benefit is actually integrating the teachings into your life. If you just took this course and you went home and did nothing, okay, it was a nice time to spend with you. You learned a few things, but it's really when you're integrating them into your life that you're actually experiencing the real results. If you're not integrating the teachings into your life, you're not going to be able to experience the results. So let me share with you how to integrate the teachings into your life now that you've been learning. What I would encourage you to do is attend weekly classes, either in person or online, where you can gain in-depth knowledge of the teachings of the Buddha. And then there are certain, kind of like retreats and things like this that you can do on an as-needed basis. So if you're like making a really great tea, or even though I don't drink coffee anymore, you guys will understand like drip coffee. When you drip coffee, the quality of the coffee becomes better and better. So it's the same thing that when you're learning the teachings, if you just drip them into your mind, it's actually better. So that's why if you do consistent ongoing learning, where maybe like 10 or 15 minutes a day, you're reading and then you're also coming to classes little by little each week. I have classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. If you just attended 1 or 2 classes a week where you're just learning for like an hour and a half or so, this is actually really helpful, just little by little that you're learning and consistently over a long-term period. But then on an as-needed basis, you might need to attend retreats for in-depth learning. And there's those opportunities for you at different times too. So like, even though I call this a course, some people might call this a retreat, where you're getting a real big dose of information all at one time. And it's great that you're doing this, but then you would like to build up in your life where you're just gradually learning the teachings through regular ongoing weekly classes. And you can do that through the live stream. You can do it here if you like by coming here in person. So it's totally up to you guys. So that's one thing that you guys can do, is attend weekly classes. And then reading the book. Volume 1 is a place to start, but there's a whole book series here. If you read like 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, over the period of about 2 years, you'd be able to read the entire book series. And you're not really interested in reading it much faster than that, because it's not about just completing the books. It's about comprehending it and understanding it and going out into the world and independently verifying it. So if you pick up the book intending to read for 20 minutes, and in the first 2 or 3 minutes, you read something and you're like, whoa, I don't know about that. I'm going to need to go reflect on this. Put the book down. No reason to sit there and just read for 20 minutes and overshoot that really important thing that your mind needs to reflect on. So even though you might intend to read for 20 minutes, which is what I recommend, 10 to 20 minutes per day, even if you pick it up and in the first 2 or 3 minutes you see something that you need to reflect on, take that time to do that. Because it's not about just getting to the end of the book series. It's about understanding each piece that you're reading and really comprehending it. In certain situations, you might need to reach out to me and ask for help. So if you're gradually, slowly but surely reading, this will be really helpful for you. And then you're going to need to develop a meditation practice at 2 or 3 times per day for 30 minutes or more. That's what you would like to build up to. And keep in mind that it's going to take 6 months, 12 months, or even 24 months, an entire 2 years to really build up to that. Slowly but surely build up. Remember, frequency is more important than duration. So if it's a matter of 1 meditation for 30 minutes or 2 for 15, go for the 2 for 15. You're going to notice more benefit in that, and then gradually expand that 15 minutes to be longer and longer and longer. So this is what you would like to build up to, gradually, slowly, but surely. You're going to need to build a meditation practice. And then develop a practice of generosity where you're frequently giving more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return, such as your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. This is something that you would like to do frequently, and you can do this in very simple ways. Like, I think that when you guys went to lunch, you gave this young lady a ride to lunch, Frank. I think she got on your motorbike and you rode. This is generosity, right? This is a very simple thing, right? It's not like it took a whole lot of effort. It's not like it took you a significant amount of money or anything like that. It was just like, hey, yeah, jump on the motorbike. Let's go. This is some generosity. So you frequently practice these kinds of things, and you can find different ways of doing that, right? So throughout your day, find ways to practice generosity regularly and frequently. This is going to help your mind. Then, as you need help, seek guidance from a teacher, right? You're going to need somebody to have a relationship with that you can reach out to. You can sit down, you can talk about some of the challenges that you're encountering and what are the solutions. So be sure to have a relationship with somebody that you can reach out to. And you guys are always welcome to reach out to me if you like. Okay, so then you would like to develop your breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on that first. That's what we developed in this particular course, that 4 to 6 weeks, you would like to be developing your breathing mindfulness meditation practice. And then it's about the right time to start bringing in your loving kindness meditation. It doesn't mean you can't bring in loving kindness at 2 weeks or 4 weeks, but usually about 4 or 6 weeks, some people even 8 weeks, they will focus on breathing mindfulness meditation and then bring in the loving kindness meditation, which are the 2 meditations that you're going to need in order to move the mind to enlightenment, because breathing mindfulness meditation takes care of the craving. Loving kindness meditation takes care of the anger, and then you're cultivating wisdom in order to antidote the ignorance. So these are the 2 meditations that everybody's going to need on the path to enlightenment. But you would like to start with this one. And you would like to develop your practice in each of these positions. Sometimes when you're learning, you're only doing it in the seated position. Your mind can get attached to doing meditation in the seated position. You would like to switch it up, introduce some impermanence every once in a while, move different locations, change different positions. You would like to do this so your mind doesn't get to the point where it's clinging or holding on to any one particular position or location, right? So you'd like to switch around, even within your own house. If you normally meditate in your bedroom, every once in a while go into the living room or the dining room or something like this. Or if you're used to meditating in your house, go outside on the patio or go out to a park or go to a different temple, move around to different locations and change different positions. So after you get really well established, maybe 4, 6, 8 weeks of meditation, then start introducing some impermanence. And your meditation isn't going to be as solid and stable when you're starting to mix things up like that, but it'll stabilize over time. If you just meditate in the same place all the time, your mind's going to get fixated to meditating in that same place. So you'd like to mix it up. And for those of you guys that are traveling, that's pretty easy because you're not really in any one particular place for a very long period of time. But if you ultimately get to your home and you're there for an extended period of time, be sure to mix it up and move your mind around in different locations. Ask questions that you have related to the path to enlightenment, whether it's with me or another community member or something like that. You can ask and get help. Practicing generosity to develop merit in assisting with cleaning at the temple. These are things that people choose to do at different times here. So these are things that we're going to do this afternoon if you guys would like. Essentially what I had to share with you guys is I had this here, which is sharing with you how to integrate the teachings into your life. And then now, since I normally do meditation with you guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, this is what you guys can do on your own now, right? That if you guys would like to spend this afternoon where you would like to do meditation, you're welcome to do that. If you would like to ask me questions related to the path to enlightenment, you can do that. If you would like to practice generosity and develop merit, you're welcome to clean. Some people like to clean here at the temple, like the bathroom or outside or inside. What I'm going to do this afternoon is I'm going to just leave it to you. Normally, you guys are used to me meditating and kind of initiating meditation, and you guys come along and we all meditate together. But now that you're looking to integrate the teachings into your life, you're going to need to make decisions on your own to decide what you're going to do in any one particular time or another. And that's what you've been doing all along. Even when I'm initiating meditation, you're choosing to meditate with me. But now I'm not going to initiate meditation. I'm going to just leave it to you guys. If you would like to do some meditation and then go home, great. If you would like to ask me some questions about the path to enlightenment and then go home, okay, great. If you would like to do some cleaning and help out at the temple and then go home, okay, great. If you would like to do all 3 of these things, maybe you would like to meditate, maybe you would like to ask me questions, maybe you would like to help out at the temple, okay, great. Or maybe you would like to just go home. Maybe it's been a long week. Maybe you got some other things that you need to do. Maybe you'd like to just go home. That's your choice, right? Whatever choices that you make, it's going to produce a certain result. So now that you're starting to move beyond this course, you're going to need to be making more and more decisions that are based on what's going on in your mind. So you decide what's best for you. These are just some options that you could partake in. So do you guys have any questions on what to do to integrate the teachings into your life on a day-to-day basis, or kind of what I'm doing this afternoon, which is just essentially like lab time, right? If the teachers taught you a bunch of things, they might cut you loose and then you have lab time to just dabble and do whatever you'd like to do. And that's what I'm doing. That's what you guys do in class too, right? Nobody's forcing you to be here. You're not required to be here. You're choosing to be here. But normally I initiate meditation, and I'm not going to do that today. I'm just going to leave it over to you guys to decide whatever it is you would like to do. So anything that you guys would like to ask me about integrating the teachings into your life? Leela has a question.
I've always been curious about what the monks like to have given to them, because I know either way they're going to take the gift. Mm-hmm. But I just want to know, like, what do they really need or want? Or I've always wanted to give them something, but I'm a little embarrassed because I don't really understand what they need.
It's basically living essentials like shampoo, soap, nail clippers, tweezers, lotions, toothpaste, toothbrushes. These are the kinds of things that oftentimes people end up giving. If you like to give a chocolate bar, you can give them a chocolate bar, things like that. Food of any type, pretty much. I always recommend offering vegan or vegetarian food because I think that's better for you, better for the environment, better for the ordained practitioners. Fruit, water, these kinds of things. Some people do choose to give a little bit of money because nowadays, even though the Buddha didn't accept money, nowadays the people accept money because you're not going to be there with us every single moment. That's why the Buddha didn't have to accept money, because he lived with his students. His students would invite them into their home, and then he would live there for several weeks or a couple of months. And then whatever he needed was provided to him. Where nowadays we don't do that as much. So students will sometimes offer financial support to an ordained practitioner, to a teacher, because we need to put gas on our motorbike or purchase a pair of shoes or something like that. So some people give ordained practitioners a little bit of funds. Just be sure if you're making an offering that you know the person a little bit, right? That you understand a little bit about their practice, because the Buddha is encouraging you to support people who are practicing the teachings closely, because that means then your offering will be very beneficial. And that's what you would like to look for. And then just whatever you offer them, just think like, what do you need to survive on a day-to-day basis? And that's what they need too. Mm-hmm.
This isn't entirely relevant to this. I mean, I'm sure it's relevant, but I'm thinking about the concept of how there's like the person, the mind, and the body, right? Mm-hmm. Like those three parts. Mm-hmm. And then I think I remember you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but the Buddha calls mindfulness the guard. You're guarding the mind with your mindfulness. Does that sound familiar?
Yep, that sounds like my words.
Cool. And so I guess for me, I'm like, wait, I thought mindfulness was just like mindfulness and awareness is just almost kind of like a thermometer, kind of like a reading tool, but not something that can actually act and impose change or have control over, making choices. Am I thinking about this incorrectly?
Yeah. So the way that you can think about mindfulness, and you'll understand this, I think I've shared this analogy with you before, is like a virus scanner on your computer. The virus scanner is like in the background. It's kind of like always on, and it's kind of monitoring your hard drive. And then if any viruses come in, then there's something that takes action to contain that particular virus and maybe quarantine it or eradicate it from the hard drive, right? But the mindfulness is just always there. The virus scanner is always there. So the same thing is true. Your mindfulness is always there. You're always aware of your mind. Mm-hmm. So now if there's anything that arises in terms of from craving, desire, attachment, there's going to be discontentedness arising, or there's going to be an unwholesome thought or something like this, then you step in and take action. And you cut that off and let it go.
And then in the model of person, mind, body, mm-hmm. It's the person that taking the action that's like the driver, so to speak, or the conductor, the operator, right?
Exactly. Okay. Exactly. You treat your mind almost like a third entity, You know, it's like, all right, little Frank, I see you over there. I see you, little mind. I see you over there, what you're doing. You're trying to do something, be disgruntled. I'm not going to let you do that. Your mind's like, no, I'm just going to sit here in the corner and be complacent and do this or do that. And you're like, yeah, I know that's what you'd like to do, but that's not what you're going to do. Come on, let's go. And then you go outside for a walk or whatever it is that you're going to do. And the mind's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. But eventually the mind's like, all right, we're just going to have fun. You know, you're out here now. Now we're going to have fun. And this is how you slowly peel away. If you have like this like putty or this rubber, and you just pull it, and it stretches and stretches and stretches, and you pull it, and eventually pop, and now it's free. Right? That's what your mind's doing, is you got to pull it towards these wholesome things, because the mind's going to want to stay in this darkness. But the person is like, no, you got to get cleaned up. Right? And the mind's like, no, I want to stay dirty. I want to roll around in the mud like a pig. And you're like, no, I'm not going to let you do that. You know, you got to get over here. So you've got to consciously, this person needs to make wise decisions to bring the mind into different situations where it has the opportunity to get the training that it needs.
Mm-hmm. So then the mind, in a sense, is kind of like our like primitive lizard brain kind of thing. It just kind of does what it feels without the executive function, you know, of our, like, I guess, higher brain with wisdom. Do you know what I mean?
The mind with pollution, it'll make unwise decisions. But by the time you purify the mind, there's nothing unwise that is happening, right? So that's why the person is working to purify the mind, so that now with the mind purified, you can be, everything's at ease. Because the body's healthy, and of course it's not going to be permanently healthy. No matter how enlightened you are, you're going to experience impermanence of the body. But at least you're taking better care of your body by the time you get to enlightenment. You've cleaned up your mind. Right? You've cleaned up the mind, it's more pure. And now the person's like, this is so great. Everything's so wonderful. Everything can be at ease. Mm-hmm. Right? So no matter how enlightened you are, there's 5 things that the Buddha teaches are unobtainable. You can't obtain permanent health. You can't attain permanent youthfulness. You can't obtain permanent life. Mm-hmm. You can't obtain a point where you don't lose things. You're going to always have loss in your life, and also destruction. So these are the unobtainable. So there's old age, sickness, death, loss, and destruction. No matter how enlightened you are, you'll still experience those 5 things, because that's impermanence. But the difference is that you won't be shaken up by it when it occurs. Your mind will be completely content and peaceful.
What was the 5th one again?
What are the 5?
Yeah, the 5th one of the 5.
So the unobtainable is permanent youthfulness, permanent health, permanent life, permanently not losing anything, mm-hmm. or destruction. You'll still experience old age, sickness, death, loss, and destruction. You're going to always experience those. But the difference is, by the time you're enlightened, it won't shake up your mind. Like you lose some money, no big deal. Mm-hmm. You experience like a tree falling on your house. Okay, tree fell on the house. This is some impermanence, not attached to the house. Let's just figure this out. Let's figure out how to get rid of it and fix it. Right? There's no sense in crying over spilt milk, so to speak. It's happened. It's some impermanence. Let's just fix it.
So then when it comes to like certain life anxieties, like death anxiety, isolation anxiety, I don't know, loneliness, lack of meaning, like all these kinds of human anxieties, is the antidote to those anxieties, those things like non-self, impermanence, suffering as a given, like those kinds of things that kind of would help one alleviate those common human anxieties then?
Those anxieties are coming from craving, desire, attachment. So when you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, you won't have the anxiety anymore. So anxiety over death, right? Fear of death. Right. This is coming from a craving for existence. Mm-hmm. Or for some people, there might be craving a painless death. They might be fearful that they're going to have a painful death, right? So there's some craving there that is producing that fear and that anxiety. And when you let go of the craving, then you won't have any fear anymore. But the mind, and there's certain tools and techniques for the mind to be able to do that. There's, of course, breathing mindfulness, meditation, generosity, cutting off when it's letting go, and letting go when it arises. But then there's also contemplation of death or reflection on death. I think you learned that in another class. Yeah, there's that to be able to help you eliminate the fear of death.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you have any recommendations about how to track and monitor our progress?
Basically, you're looking at the 10 fetters and you're looking at the quality of your mind, but you're not interested in getting obsessed about this, of course, because that could be craving, desire, attachment, and then now it's going to hinder your progress because the mind wants to make so much progress. It actually doesn't. It's like self-sabotaging. So what you would like to do is just see that at the beginning, you would like to get your arms around the Eightfold Path. That's where a lot of your focus is for the first several months. Like if someone asked you, Helena, what is right speech? You should be able to say, refrain from lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech. But more detail, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, speak gentle, speak beneficial with a mind of loving kindness. You should be able to just because you have it here, because that's what you're going to need in order to practice. Because when you're on the phone with your mom or whoever, I don't know what relationships you have, but if you're on the phone with somebody and like you feel frustration arising, you can't be like, hold on a second, let me check my book. Can you just hold on? Oh, the 5 factors. Oh, speak at the right time. Oh, gentle. That's the one I'm missing. Okay, start again. Time in, right? You're not going to be able to do that. So you need to have it like on board right here. So each one of those factors, you should be able to just know it cold. And sometimes it takes a few months for somebody to be able to do that. So once you get that under your belt and you understand that really well and you're practicing it really well to include your meditation, you'll start experiencing the jhanas. And now you know, okay, that's the first indication. Well, you see other indications too. You've already seen it, where your life is improving and your condition of your mind's improving. But when you get to the jhanas, that's when it gets really real, because you start reading the words of the Buddha about what he describes you're going to experience if you practice the Eightfold Path, and you're actually practicing it, and you're actually experiencing that. And you're like, whoa, this person said this stuff 2,500 years ago. I'm looking at it in a book. I did what he said. I'm actually experiencing exactly what he said. Wow, this stuff is true. This stuff is real. And now the jhanas is like the first real big indication that, okay, the mind is truly progressing, but you'll have other indicators on the way before you even get to the jhanas. So I don't suggest you get obsessive about that, but just observe that you're making progress each day. Learn the Eightfold Path really well. Get that under your belt. As you're starting to experience the jhanas, and even before, as you got that Eightfold Path under your belt, that's where you'd like to start looking at the 10 fetters really closely. And that's what the retreat's coming up in August, because that's what's going to help propel you into the stages of enlightenment, is getting rid of those fetters. Mm-hmm.
Will there ever be a time where everyone and everything is enlightened at the same time on this planet?
I would say yes, but if you've done the work that you need to do in this life, you won't be here when it happens. What? So as far as I know, humanity has another 80,000 years. And that's why, like 2,500 years ago for us, it seems like so long ago, but it's really not that long, especially if you consider the world, or at least the Earth, has been here for at least 4.5 billion years. Like we can't even fathom that number, 4.5 billion years. 2,500 years ago is like a blink of an eye when you look at that long of a time, right? So 80,000 years, while that sounds like a long time, and it is, it's really not that long when you consider 4.5 billion. That we only have 80,000 more years. So in the next 80,000 years, humanity will be gradually figuring out more and more how to live in harmony and getting more and more to enlightenment. And I would suspect that by the time we get to that point, the vast majority of the world would be enlightened. The Buddha teaches this too, because he says to one of his students, he says, don't be the last person, or don't be the last man. right? Because if you're like the last one to get to enlightenment, can you imagine like everybody else in the world is enlightened and you're the only one that's still angry and disgruntled and frustrated? So the Buddha tells his students, like, don't be the last one, right? So he basically teaches the same thing, that everyone's going to get to enlightenment. But if you've done your work in this life, you'll never see that, at least in this human form. No need to come back and see it.
What is the purpose of Buddha making a second return? Is it to help enlightenment, to further enlightenment here?
You've been here way more than just this existence. Once you get to enlightenment, you're not going to come back to this cycle of rebirth. Sometimes people teach, which isn't what the Buddha taught, but they teach that once you are in this life, you should take a vow not to get to enlightenment so that you can come back and help others get to enlightenment. But this isn't what the Buddha taught. This is like, would you go to a driving school and learn how to drive a car from someone who's never driven a car before? No, that would be unwise, right? And that person wouldn't even be able to teach you how to drive a car because they've never done it themselves. So the idea that somebody's going to not get to enlightenment in order to help other people get to enlightenment, it's like you can't even do it yourself. How could you help anybody else get to enlightenment? So what the Buddha taught is you get to enlightenment. You get to enlightenment yourself. And then you would be in the best position if you'd like to help others, to help others. But let's just say you, because not everyone's going to be a teacher, right? But let's just say you get to enlightenment and you're a nurse. Wow, you'd be a wonderful nurse, even more wonderful than you are already. And think about all the love and all the compassion and all the wisdom that you would have in that role to be able to share with patients and doctors and other nurses and other colleagues. You know, the light is going to spread. If you've ever seen the Facebook meme where like there's a whole room of like people who are in the darkness, and then there's like one person who comes in, and then they like brighten up the room, and more everyone else becomes bright. It's the same kind of thing, that the more enlightened you become, the people around you will become more and more cheerful and more and more joyful because you're sharing that light, right? So the more that you become enlightened, you will become more joyful. You will see other people around you getting to that point, and it'll spread more and more throughout the world, but it's going to take many generations for that to occur. But we have 80,000 more years for that to occur.
When everyone is enlightened, is that when everything will end because no one will be reborn?
Yeah, by the time we get to the point where everyone is enlightened, there won't be any more humanity. We know humanity is impermanent. The Buddha didn't teach whether the world is infinite or whether the world is finite. He didn't teach that, or whether it's eternal or non-eternal. When he's talking about the world, he's talking about like the universe, right? But we know the earth itself, and the Buddha said this too, the earth itself is impermanent because we can see it arose, it changes, and it fades away. It's impermanent. We know humanity is impermanent. It arose, it changes, and fades away. So we know that humanity is impermanent because it's conditioned. There are certain conditions that were met, it arose, it changes, and it fades away. And by everybody getting to enlightenment, eventually people aren't going to be having sex any longer. The more and more people that get to enlightenment. That's not the ultimate goal. Like the Buddha wasn't trying to get rid of humanity by teaching them how to get to enlightenment. He's trying to help people get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. But having done so, eventually there won't be any more beings to come into existence. But there's so many countless beings in the world, there's plenty more. Like right now we have 8 billion human beings. That's a drop in the bucket compared to what's waiting in the animal world that hasn't actually been reborn yet. So like just take like one ant colony that maybe has 500,000 ants. That's 500,000 beings that need to come into the world. And then, so the animal world is enormous, right? And from what scientists tell us is the number of animals that once existed, what we're seeing in the world today, they say that represents only 1%. That 99% of all the animals are now extinct that once existed in the world. And that makes sense because what we see is we see the animal realm shrinking and we see the human realm expanding. That's exactly what we would see if there is indeed a cycle of rebirth. That if we see that animal realm shrinking, we should see other realms starting to expand. And that's what we see. But even still, with that 1% of animals still in the animal world, there's countless beings that are still needing to get to enlightenment and even get to a birth where they have the potential to get to enlightenment. So that's why there's about another 80,000 years for us to be able to do that. But you can do the work in this life and be done with it all. Peace out.
Where do you get to go in that case? Does
What's that?
Buddha talk about that? Like what formless being you are if you do reach enlightenment and get out of the cycle?
Once you get to enlightenment and die, we call this final enlightenment, because as long as you're in a human existence like this, you can get to the point where you don't experience any more mental anguish, but you'll still experience physical pain. But it's going to be very muted and very minimal, because the mind and the body are still together. You can't eliminate that as long as you're alive. But it's very minimal, because normally you experience physical pain and then you experience mental anguish with it, which actually heightens the physical pain. But when you get rid of the mental anguish, you just experience the physical pain and it's very muted. So now when you get to what we would normally refer to as death, for an enlightened being, we call this final enlightenment, right? And now final enlightenment is the mind and the body separate. And now that's what we call final enlightenment. What happens next, the Buddha leaves it as an undeclared teaching. He specifically says, I didn't declare whether what does happen or what doesn't happen after death. Sometimes people tell you that you don't exist any longer, or some people tell you go to some pure Buddha land or whatever. This isn't actually true. The Buddha never taught any of this stuff. He left it as an undeclared teaching. You can see it in his own words that he left it as an undeclared teaching. So if you don't get to enlightenment, there's definitely going to be rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. But once you get to enlightenment and die, he leaves that as an undeclared teaching. And I have different reasons why I think he did that wisely. If you'd like to hear, I'll share it with you. You'd like to know? Okay. The first thing is a Buddha only ever teaches something that they've experienced for themselves, because they know that it's true. And they, through their own direct experience, they can see it, they know it's true, and that's why they can teach it, because it's the truth. So he had never experienced getting to enlightenment and dying before. So that's one reason why he might not have taught it. The second reason is that if, let's just say there's something wonderful after enlightenment, right? It's just so wonderful. Well, if he did know this, because a Buddha does have the ability to know something without having experienced it. Let's just say he did know that there was something next and it's so wonderful. Well, if he explained what that was, that's just one more craving you have to get rid of. Because then if he explained it, people are like, oh, I want to get to that. And now that very thing is going to hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment, because the more you crave it, now you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment. You're just going to stay stuck in this constant cycle. So if he did know what it was, he wisely didn't explain it. And then the third reason is maybe there's nothing next. But it doesn't matter at that point, because by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's so peaceful and so joyful, it doesn't matter. So this path isn't about an afterlife and getting to an afterlife that is wonderful and glorious, because that's the future. The goal is to get to a content and peaceful, wonderful life now in this life. And that's what makes the teachings of the Buddha very unique and very different. So either he didn't know because he never experienced it. Either he did know and it was really wonderful, and if he did explain it, that would just be one more craving you have to get rid of. Or maybe there isn't anything next and it doesn't really matter anyway, because your mind's going to be so peaceful and joyful at enlightenment, it really truly doesn't matter what's next.
But if I'm taking too much
No,
time,
you can ask whatever you like. That's what we're in. We're in this period right here. You guys can do meditation. You can ask questions, or if you like to practice generosity, or if you'd like to just leave, you can do that too. Up to you.
When Buddha comes back again, will it be the same Buddha from 2,500 years ago, or a new soul that just doesn't need a teacher to have enlightenment?
So the Buddha, he was enlightened. So when he died, he will never come back again, because he reached
rules.
final enlightenment. The Buddha that he talked about, the future Buddha, Maitreya Buddha, this would be a completely different being. It's not the same being as Gautama Buddha. He didn't teach that there is a soul or there isn't a soul. So this is another undeclared teaching from the Buddha. So when you say, like, would it be another soul? It's more of, would it be a different being, right? Because he didn't teach that there is a soul or isn't a soul. But yes, it would be a different being altogether. But that individual would be sharing the same exact teachings, but just with updated analogies and descriptions and things like this. But it's the same natural laws that lead to enlightenment during his lifetime as lead to enlightenment now.
Thought maybe he'd come back and tell us what's on the other side with some new teachings.
No, he wouldn't come back. So like Jesus coming back, that's because Jesus wasn't enlightened yet. So he needs to come back, and he needed to be able to share more. Mm-hmm.
David, do you know what was like when first beings originated? What were they?
So the Buddha describes that the beginning of the cycle of rebirth is undiscoverable, that it's not possible to discover. He does tell a creation story of how the world came about. He has that. It's in volume 11, I think it's chapter 63. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's titled Knowledge on the Beginnings. And you can read it in volume 11. And it's a creation story of how the world came about. And it's all based in craving, desire, attachment. But in terms of when it started, he says that it's undiscoverable. And it truly is. Like, we can have our best guess, but that's only based until the next scientific discovery comes about, right? Like, people generally think the world is somewhere between like 4.2 billion years to, I think I've heard as many as 4.7 or 5 billion years, but I've also heard as low as like 3.8 billion years or something like that. So somewhere in there, the world started, but to know exactly when and exactly how, it's undiscoverable because none of us were there. But he does give a creation story in that chapter.
Yeah, thank you. And when eventually everybody gets enlightened, then it means that there will be no hell beings, no ghosts, no animals either, right? No heavenly beings. Okay. Mm-hmm. But God, the creator, will still exist.
God is also impermanent as well. God just has a really long lifespan compared to other beings. And heavenly beings are like that too. Heavenly beings have a really long lifespan as well. And God has a really long lifespan.
And do we know who created God?
The Buddha doesn't describe that. He does talk about God as the creator. I don't know that anything created God. I don't know. There's certain questions that we are interested to know. But when you look at you getting rid of discontentedness, it doesn't really impact that. So I think every question is valid and every question is important to ask and answer. But there's some questions where it's like, oh, that doesn't matter because it's not going to help you to eliminate discontentedness. And that's one of those. But we don't know. If you ever meet God, maybe you can ask and he will answer it for you. But that's one of the ones that we don't have the answer to.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are heavenly beings just enlightened people who have died and passed on?
Heavenly beings are still in the cycle of rebirth. They haven't gotten to enlightenment yet, and they're not permanent. They're still in the cycle of rebirth. They're still in existence. So a heavenly being, you can get into heaven through, like, you were here on Monday when I was talking about the 4 stages of enlightenment. So getting into the 3rd stage of enlightenment and you're reborn in heaven, you will get to enlightenment in that existence. But there's other ways to get into heaven. There's not just one door to get into heaven. That would be permanence if there were just one door. So even if you're in the jhanas or even if you're not in the jhanas, you can actually still be reborn into the heavenly realm. And then from there, those beings still have to get to enlightenment. But oftentimes they're complacent because heavenly beings are different than human beings in that they have a very long lifespan. They're formless, of course, but they only experience pleasant feelings. They don't experience painful feelings or neither painful nor pleasant. So with those pleasant feelings, they tend to have a lack of motivation to be able to get to enlightenment. And that's why the human realm is as much suffering as you might experience in the human realm. It's actually the ideal existence because you have built-in motivation to get to enlightenment. You're interested in getting away from that sadness and that loneliness and boredom. Those beings in the heavenly realm, they don't experience that. So they tend to be complacent and they don't learn and practice. So they're oftentimes reborn from the heavenly realm down into other realms because it's not a permanent existence. And now they have to make their way to get to enlightenment. They can get to enlightenment in the heavenly realm, but they oftentimes don't because of their complacency. I know it's completely different than what you were exposed to in your Baptist church in North Carolina. But see, look, like if you look at the stories of the Bible, they talk about this angel that was in heaven, and this angel was doing corrupt things, and God kicked him out, and now that's what the devil is. So you can see right there that heaven is not a permanent existence, even in what they describe, but this is where the delusion and the confusion is, right? Yeah, they don't put it together. They don't see, like, hold on a second. If it wasn't permanent for that person, it's not permanent for me either. This is where they don't understand impermanence in the Christian faith. There's so many things they don't understand, unfortunately. But now's their opportunity to learn it.
Yeah, I thought you were done once you reached being a heavenly being.
Nope, that's what Christianity teaches. Yeah, you're still in existence. You're still in the cycle of rebirth. It's a really long time frame, and it's a pleasant existence, but it's not ideal. It's not ideal at all. This is the ideal existence, as much misery as you experience.
It's almost like, okay, well, you got part of the way there, so you don't have to go back into like the animal realm or a lower realm. But now you have to go somewhere where it's going to be even harder for you because you don't have a driving discomfort.
You can be reborn from heaven down to hell, animal, or afflicted spirits. It's only once you get to the first stage of enlightenment that you won't be reborn into the lower realms. So even heavenly beings can be reborn into the lower realms. And you can also be reborn from the lower realms straight up into the heavenly realm too. It's very rare, but it does happen. So even in the human realm, you can be reborn back down into the lower realms, just like the heavenly beings.
So I'm assuming that Buddha at some point had to have experienced all of that to know that?
Yep.
How was he aware? Oh, you said he had a really good memory of even like his past lives?
Yes.
Okay.
He was able to recount his past lives in detail, and he existed in all of these different realms. So that's why he was able to explain it. And there's people today that have experienced those things too, that they can remember their existences in those realms and they can verify that. And that's how people know that these things are true and that you don't have to function on belief.
Do you know what animals Buddha used to be?
I don't recall 100%. I remember chicken and, swan and things like this, but pretty much a lot of them. Yeah.
So it seems to me that heavenly beings and enlightened human beings have similar existence.
Not really, because a heavenly being is still experiencing conditional pleasant feelings. An enlightened being isn't experiencing conditional pleasant feelings. They're experiencing the unconditioned mental qualities, which is different than conditional pleasant feelings.
And can you please explain, how could it potentially feel to have conditioned pleasant feelings all the time?
I don't know.
Okay. Get it.
So I remember a lot from the animal realm. I remember a lot from the human realm, of course. I must have been in heaven and afflicted spirits and hell realm at some point, because even without studying the teachings of the Buddha, I understood and knew the qualities of those beings. So when I read it in the words of the Buddha, I was like, oh yeah, this is true, because I remember this. But I don't remember like exact existences, where in the human realm, in animal realm, I do have a lot of recall of that.
And could you tell us more about how it was to be a chicken?
You see what a chicken does. They go around and, that's what they do. Eating insects, having sex, sleeping, roosting,
Okay, thank you. And we talked recently about how after the second stage of enlightenment, one gives up on sex, which happens kind of organically. Would you say that full enlightenment is a bit like permanent orgasm?
A permanent orgasm? An orgasm is conditioned feelings, and it arises, changes, and fades away, and it's like, you're up there really high, right? Like the mind's really high. Without that peak, you're just always joyful. Think about, you've done a little bit of drugs, dabbling, you've shared that publicly, right? Think about the very best high you've ever had on a drug and multiply that times 1,000,000. And that's what enlightenment is.
Sounds appealing.
Yeah. It's anything you can fathom, but it's not the same as like an orgasm or a drug, because those are conditional experiences that gradually arise, change, and fade away, and ultimately end up feeling miserable again, where that's not the case with enlightenment. You gradually start experiencing more and more the qualities of enlightenment, and then it's persistent, consistent, and each day you wake up, it's like, oh my goodness, there it is. It's still there. The light's always on.
Thank you.
Yep. Any more?
Do you remember any of your other forms?
I remember 2 previous human existences before this one, and lots of animals. Lots of animals. Those are the ones I have the deepest memories about. But like I mentioned, I must have been in these other realms because I understood them without even reading the teachings of the Buddha.
I feel like I must have had something in a past life because of how drawn in this direction I've kind of always been in my life. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I got this book, it was like just everything, like a flood. But I don't have memories. Does that start to come to you as enlightenment comes to you?
Yeah, as you're getting rid of more and more of the pollution, you might notice more and more of the memories coming through. And that's where it's important to understand them as memories, because some of those memories are not going to be good. And you just understand okay, that's in the past, let it go. I'm fine now. I'm safe. That guy's no longer chasing me. That was in my previous life, and I was running through the park and somebody was chasing me, and I don't have to be scared now. This will help you get your stability of your mind. So yeah, as you're getting rid of more and more pollution, think about it like when you go out on the street, like out here, you can just see that one street. But if you went up to the mountain, you could see how all the streets are interconnecting because you're at a higher vantage point. So when your mind's moving to this higher consciousness, it's because you've gotten rid of your pollution. You're moving to a higher consciousness. You can see more of this life and what you've been doing in this life and your previous lives too. So it's like relocating to the top of a mountain, and now you can see all the roads interconnecting to each other. Same thing. You're moving to a higher vantage point. And you start looking at your life now and oh my goodness, I messed that up. I messed that up. Yep, I messed that up. But then you can also say yeah, I did well over here. I would like to keep doing that. Those are wise decisions I made here. I'd like to do that. So you get a better vantage point of this life, and you might see your past lives too, but not everybody who gets to enlightenment sees their past lives. And the only thing that really does for you is it helps you confirm the cycle of rebirth, that you know it's 100% true, but you can confirm it other ways too. But that's the one whoa, for sure, right? And then also it can help you see your cravings in your previous lives, and that's why you have certain cravings now, right? So for example, when I got out of college, I bought this brand new condo, and I just completely remodeled it and did new tiles, crown molding, wallpaper, new wood floors, and all this stuff. I had no training in any of this stuff. And then ultimately, by the time I saw my previous lives, I realized that I was doing that type of work in a previous life, and I still had that craving. And that's why I was doing those kinds of things. Even though I didn't have to, there was nothing wrong with this condo. It was just fine. But I just had this overwhelming urge to do that. And even here in Thailand, at one point, I opened up a handyman business, and I was doing that work. So I had to extinguish that craving by doing it. Mm-hmm.
Can I ask about heavenly beings? How could they potentially come to lower existences if they don't experience anger? and they don't experience craving, I assume, because craving is unpleasant.
They still have craving. That's what's producing the pleasant feelings.
Yeah, it's not okay.
Yeah, because you can have craving. So as long as you have craving in your mind, you're still going to experience rebirth. So in that situation, they have craving, desire, attachment. So they're experiencing pleasant feelings, and those same cravings can take them into other realms, and they can increase their craving while they're in the heavenly realm too. It can increase if they're not training their mind.
And life on different planets, is it compatible with the teachings of the Buddha?
I would think so. I've never been to another planet, so I don't know. But I would suspect that because these are the natural laws of existence, this is like the natural world, this is how the world is constructed, that whatever we see here, we would see in those other planets too. But I just can't confirm it for myself, so I don't know because I've never been there. But I would suspect it's the same natural laws.
Thank you.
And, someday when this world meets and can confirm existence in other planets, even though those beings look different than us, they would still be in the human realm, right? So they have a different shaped head, a different height, a different color skin, but these beings are in the human realm. And the way that I understand it from people's experiences of these beings, they seem much more evolved than us, because if they've been able to make it here the way that we think, we can't even find where they are in the world. Not only did they find us, but they have ability to get here and get back. So they're much more evolved, it seems like, than we are.
And I'm aware that conspiracy theories go against the Buddhist teachings. However, I would just like to ask you for your opinion. If it was true that Earth is manipulated by some highly evolved beings, and this is a prison planet that we can't escape unless we get enlightened, I mean, it makes sense kind of, right?
I wouldn't say that this planet is being manipulated by higher beings. That's speculation. And that's where the Buddha says, if you speculate about the world, it leads to madness and frustration. So I don't have any evidence of that because obviously there's beings like Mara that are very powerful and interested in causing calamity, but that being can't make anything happen in the world unless they influence other beings to do things. Right. So God, which you guys will learn about in about 10 days, that being has the power to do anything and everything. But that being only wields that power in very unique situations. And they're only interested in wholesome things for the world, of course, but they don't wield that power and manipulate the world and make it into any particular way because everybody has free will.
That's the basis, right? Like the most important quality of this universe.
Yeah, everybody has free will.
Okay, thank you again for all your answers.
You're welcome. Frank's turn.
It shouldn't be that long. So taking the model of the person, mind, body, and then if we overlay that with the 5 aggregates, right? I mean, what we're talking about, it's more of a conceptual, separation, right? Because I'm guessing the person in this respect is more a combination of consciousness and mental formations with a particular focus on like awareness and mindfulness and action taken. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to fit it into the 5 aggregates model.
So the 5 aggregates are form, which explains the physical body, and then feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and consciousness, which is the mind. All of that is inside the mind. The consciousness is the mind. Feelings, perceptions, volitional formations are inside the mind. Okay. So now these two things coming together, that's the person. That's how the Buddha describes the person. The combination of the mind and the body. Because the mind is one thing, the body is another thing. But the combination of the two, now that's the person.
And then, when it comes to that,
it's still on. It's
testing. That has like the agency, the awareness, the witness, right? The observer, like that portion. I mean that is kind of like, is that like a subsection of each of those 5 aggregates then? or just like mental formations, consciousness. Like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like,
I didn't follow that one.
So I guess I'm trying to overlay the model that we were talking about, where the person is the one who's observing, watching things, and then choosing with wisdom, right? There's the mind who's probably doing all those other things that it's done for decades, patterns, cravings, desires, and then there's the body, right? Okay. So I guess I'm trying to fit the person portion of that into the 5 aggregates.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest you do that, because the person is the combination of all of those 5 aggregates. And the person is functioning through the mind. So even though we call these 3 different things, and you can think of them as 3 different things, it does help you to think of it that way. The person is experiencing everything through the mind. Everything you experience is through the mind. And that's why if the mind's polluted, life is going to be much more miserable. Whereas if your mind's purified, you're going to experience a very peaceful life.
Got it. Changing gears now. We were talking about past lives and previous lives and such. And I mean, how does one get more in touch with or get to know their past lives more? Or is it pure just like speculation? Like, for example, you were like a handyman and that kind of thing. You're like, maybe there's something to this in a past life.
I don't suggest you try to induce this. There's nothing that the Buddha teaches to induce it, because even if you do induce it, you're not going to trust it that it was actually real. Just train your mind on the path to enlightenment. Just work your way to enlightenment, your Eightfold Path and all the other teachings that you've learned. If you're going to see past lives and observe it, it will happen. There's nothing that you need to do to force that or make that happen. And even if you could do something like that, you're not going to trust it. But if it's going to happen, it will happen, and you'll know. And it's not just one thing, it's multiple things that come together that you'll be able to see it very clearly. It's unmistakable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. We're all questioned out for now. Okay. So I'll just end class by thanking you guys for your questions, not just today, but all throughout the class. Thank you for your interest in learning. Thank you for practicing and being diligent students to understand. If you guys would like to learn more, you're more than welcome to. You guys know all the options to do that. And whatever you guys choose to do for the rest of your day, have fun and be well and enjoy. We'll see you next time. Okay? Sawadee krap. Oh, yes. Let's talk about the field trip before I cut off the live stream, in case there's anybody out there watching that's coming. So what we do is we get together here, and I start class at 9 o'clock. I welcome everybody, and then I do meditation. And then after the meditation, I just look around and see who's here, and then we count, and however many people we have, I usually get transportation with the songtaos, the red trucks. And then we go from here to Wat Umong. That's the forest temple. We tour around there for about an hour and a half or so. Then we get in the trucks and we go up on the mountain to the restaurant. There's a Hill Tribe restaurant that I go to that has all kinds of foods. And if they don't have something that you like, they'll go get it for you. And then after that, we go into the temple on the mountain, Wat Doi Suthep. And then after that, we get in the trucks and we come down here and we get back here somewhere between 4 and 5. And usually what the students do is they all share the cost of the trucks. And it ends up being somewhere between $200 to $300 or 300 baht, $200 to $300, $200 to 300 baht. And so if you have like 600, 700, 800 baht in your pocket, you'd be more than fine, because you'd have your transportation, you'd have your food, there's a little bit of an entrance fee in some of the temples. And if you'd like to buy something along the way, there's stuff along the way, like you don't have to be loaded up with water and food. You could just come with a little bit of money in your pocket. And if you like to take pictures, a camera, and you'd be completely fine. That's what you'll see. I have a little bit of money, my driver's license, my motorbike key, and I have my phone, and that's it. We'll just walk, and then there'll be stuff all along the way. And it's a great time because you get to spend time with people, and you get to meet people, and you get to practice the teachings. It's kind of like a classroom without walls that I tour people around and teach the artwork, the architecture, the symbolism, and you can learn all the way along the way. Mm-hmm.
Around what time do you think you guys will make it to Wat Umong, roughly?
Usually we get there around 10 o'clock. somewhere between 10 and 10:15 is where we typically arrive. But of course, impermanent. Sometimes maybe earlier, sometimes a little bit later.
We've at around like lunchtime then to head up to Dorsey.
Yeah, usually.
Okay. I may join. That's kind of why I'm asking.
Okay. Yeah, you're going to join us over there? Yeah, you're welcome to do that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll see you guys another time.